A very even game for the Buffalo Sabres, but they fall onto the short end of the stick against the Toronto Maple Leafs. We'll talk about the game. There's some news on the arena, Toronto going to the playoffs, and something that I picked up about Bo Byram listening to some stuff yesterday. That's all coming up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast.
You're Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody, and welcome into this Wednesday edition of the Locked On Sabres podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. That includes watching us on our YouTube channel. You can like and subscribe to the show there. If you would like to get engaged with the show, best way to do that is by being a part of our Locked On Sabres text club. And if you would like to become a member there, join subtext.com/LockedOnSabres is the place where you can sign up. Today's episode of Locked On Sabres is presented by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Sneaky Joe DiBiase, following a loss to the Toronto Maple Leafs, we have one game to go in the regular season, and it certainly feels like at this point that the end of the year cannot come soon enough, and the offseason cannot come soon enough. The Sabres limping to the finish line. You had an angry Jason Zucker talking about it after the game, that they have lost 4 games in a row now after a 5-game win streak. And the home streak comes to an end. They had won every home game for over a month, and that's now over with this loss to Toronto, which we'll talk more about coming up on today's show. The Sabres, though, heading into the offseason on a sour note after thinking, we thought they were going to be heading in on a positive note. I had made the point about the players being in the right mental space and, having that surge of energy going into the summer, which I think can help when you're trying to come back in better shape. And a lot of these players maybe want to change their body types from now to the beginning of next year. And you can even lump Powers' injury in with that point. And now these losses and it's going the other way down the stretch here. One game to go, Philadelphia. It's fan appreciation night at the arena, and first 15,000 fans get an Alex Tuck bobblehead. So if you're going to the game, be sure to be one of the first 15,000 fans there. And then we'll head to the offseason and we'll head to the playoffs and the Calder Cup playoffs. I'm working on something as a regular guest / segment for the Amerks during their playoff run. We will, in large sense, become not entirely, of course, maybe one episode a week, become a little Locked On Amerks as our alter ego over here on the podcast. And here's to hoping they go on a deep playoff run, of course. I had one text question, actually, I want to start with today before we get to the Leafs game that actually relates to the Amerks as they close up their regular season in the next couple of days, and then they go to the playoffs. Asking about Yuri Kulik. And is it a foregone conclusion that Yuri Kulik will go to the Amerks? I had one texter ask that yesterday. And to me, the answer is probably, but it doesn't have to be definitive. He could just want the summer to work on his body and not feel like he needs to play any more hockey. He could go to the World Championships, I believe. Czechia, I'm sure, would be happy to have him at the Worlds. I actually don't know where. I should look this up real quick. Where are the World Championships this year? Because if they're like in Prague, that might make you think even more so. No, they are in Sweden and Denmark. So, but still, he could still go there. He is eligible, though. He is eligible to go down to the Amerks and play in the AHL playoffs, the Calder Cup playoffs. I would still lean that that's the most likely outcome. I would think that's the best place for him. I would root for that because you want to see the Amerks win it all. And I can't imagine that they wouldn't think Kulik would help them a lot. He was not awesome in the playoffs last year, but he's a year older. And I also think, remember we got in all the Matthew Savoy fighting a couple of years ago about whether he should be playing or not. He'd come from juniors in the middle of the playoffs for the Amerks and then shown up and got a couple of games in. I think it's a little different when you have like some guy from college or some guy from juniors that shows up as the playoffs are starting or have already begun, having never played with the team before, maybe never even being a pro hockey player before. I mean, in those two instances, the guy would have never played pro hockey. And then having to both adjust to a new league and a new game that you're completely unfamiliar with, and adjusting to playing with teammates that you've never played with before. That would have been what Savoy, for instance, would have been placed into a couple years ago. Kulich, even though he only played 4 games this year for the Amherst, I mean, he has not been a part of their run at all. He still has played over 100 games in the AHL, and he's played with almost everybody on that team. Not everybody. I mean, Eric Brandstrom on the blue line, he's never played with, but he's played with Roseanne. He's played with Metza. He's played with, all these guys. He's played with Lucas Rusek. He's played with Murray. Hellenius, maybe he hasn't played with, but for the most part, I don't think would have much adjustment to getting back into the rhythm of that locker room and, knowing all the guys and chemistry and whatnot. So I think Kulich should go to Rochester, and I really am hoping that he goes to Rochester instead of the World Championships or just taking the summer off. Let's get to last night's game. The Sabres fall to the Toronto Maple Leafs. It was a 4-0 final, and the game ends up looking on the scoreboard worse than it was. If you didn't watch the game fully or were checking in and out of it, it was a close game. I was there in attendance, and it was definitely 80-20 Leaf fans, at least. I mean, there was not a lot of energy from the Sabres end of things in that game. Actually, for atmosphere, it wasn't really that crazy because there wasn't a lot to get excited about during the game. It was a defensive battle. It was a goaltending battle, and you only had one goal until the final couple of minutes, and then the Leafs start to pour it on. Marner gets his 100th point on a goal on Luukkonen late in the game. You have an empty netter, and then that empty netter, by the way, that was Matthews getting his 400th goal. So the Leafs fans start going nuts at the end because Marner gets his 100th point, Matthews gets his 400th goal, and they clinch the division, and they feel that coming. So the Leaf fans really got into it at the end. Sabre fans might have been gone by then, especially once it was like 3-0, and then that 4th goal goes in, which, by the way, the goal that you give up after an empty netter is got to be the worst goal to give up in hockey. Got to be the worst feeling. And Lindy was mad about it after the game. He was borderline irate about his team leaving Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen out to dry for him to give up a goal after they had already given up the empty netter, and they were just trying to run out the clock. Jacob Bryson maybe would have been the biggest culprit. Good thing they signed him, right? They had to make sure they beat the rest of the league to him at free agency. So he was maybe the culprit on that play. And Luukkonen otherwise was playing pretty well. That might also be part of Lindy's frustration. In fact, I think he said it, that Luukkonen gave them a good game. Luukkonen was good in this game, and he earned the game's number 3 star. I think he easily could have been the number 2 star on the night. The Leafs in this game, 32 shots on goal. Luukkonen turns away 29 of them. And again, like until the end, he only allowed the 1. He gave the Sabres a chance to win the game. Now, the other end of things, Anthony Stolarz has a little bit of a Sabre killer thing going on right now because he shuts out the Buffalo Sabres last night. That is 3 straight shutouts for Anthony Stolarz. That's what I saw on Twitter, that Stolarz has been dominant against the Buffalo Sabres. And he's been great lately. Stolarz, in his last 7 starts, 8 starts now, has only allowed 11 goals. And he's got a north of a .950 save percentage. He's got multiple shutouts, of course. So he's been very good. 3 straight shutouts in KeyBank Center, by the way, is the stat on Stolarz. So he's become a little bit of a Sabre killer, a la Brian Elliott, Roberto Luongo, some of these goalies of the past that have always been great against them. And the Sabres had their opportunities. They really did. They had some tic-tac-toe plays. They had a bunch of power play opportunities. There was one power play where J.J. Peterka had 3 glorious one-timer opportunities, and I thought he got a good shot off on all 3, and Stolarz just met him out on top of the crease and made the save. There was a couple saves on Thompson. There was a backdoor save that he made on Kulich at one point in time. I mean, he was great. and sometimes you just get goalied. Now, the game itself still wasn't that high event. It wasn't that high energy between the two teams. And that is a thing that I want to get to about the Leafs coming back here is the style they played, and it's a point to make about Toronto, as they now go to play Ottawa. That is locked in stone. It'll be the Senators and the Maple Leafs in the first round of the playoffs, the Battle of Ontario for the first time in 2 decades. I got a thought about the Leafs stemming from last night's game and how they chose to play the Buffalo Sabres. Get to that, a little bit more on that game, and then something I heard from Bo Byram before the game. That's coming up here in the Locked On Sabres podcast. Today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast presented by Monarch Money. Have you ever checked your bank account and wonder what's going on here? Where did all my money go? Between eating out, online shopping, I mean, those social media sites now are just begging you to buy something. It's easy to lose track. And that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, plan some long-term goals. Managing money with your partner, smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, stay on the same page without all the stress. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. Sneaky Joe DiBiase back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. The Sabres fall 4-0 to the Toronto Maple Leafs at KeyBank Center. 1 game to go. No goals for the Sabres in this one. And Steven Lorenz scores a goal for the Maple Leafs. That's really the big goal of back on that. It's a little bit of a what really it's just a little bit unlucky, honestly. You watch that goal back, it happened in the defensive zone. There's actually, you could, to be fair, there are 2 guys that you really could blame on this one. It's right at the 5 guys on the ice for the Sabres: Noah Ostlund, Zach Benson, Sam Lafferty. So it's not a regular line. These guys have not played together. Ostlund and Lafferty have, but not Benson. So end of a shift for one of them, sure. And then Clifton and Byram are the defense pairings. So really, this is a little bit of a miscommunication and plus some unluckiness. The miscommunication, and I think you could blame equally the two parties. Noah Ostlund, who's playing center, and Bo Byram. There's one Maple Leaf, I think it's Matthew Nyes, the defensive responsibility on this play. Ostlund is battling along the wall, and then he trades off with Byram. Byram then chases the puck, and I've got a defenseman and a center that are both chasing the same player. And one of them needs to divert that player and go find somebody else to cover. Go find an open space to cover. So those 2 defending the same guy is your first problem. Your second problem is Connor Clifton does not realize. Actually, you have 2 sets of Sabres guarding guarding one player. Zach Benson is doing his job on this play. I don't want to sound like a Benson apologist, like everything he does is right, but I have a hard time watching plays a lot and not thinking that Benson did the right thing. And when it doesn't go his way, sometimes it's just bad breaks or it's teammates. So Benson is covering his man. Connor Clifton, I think he thinks, I'll switch with Benson here. I'll guard the Leaf in front of the net. Benson will go get somebody else or he'll chase out to the point. What really Clifton should do here is he should settle in the middle and look for a guy to cover, because Benson's got the Leaf in front of the net and he doesn't. Clifton goes down to cover the Leaf in front of the net. So actually, this is the unlucky part. Benson, here's the Benson mind on display here. Benson recognizes what's happening. Benson picks up on it. Spidey senses are tingling. He sees, There's an open zone right in the middle of the slot, and here comes Lorenz to fill that gap for an open one-timer. So Benson, seeing Clifton's covering to cover his guy, Benson tries to get there, but he bumps into Clifton. Him and Clifton bump into each other. So by the time the pass has arrived, Benson, he might even be screening Luukkonen at this point because he can't get out of the way and he can't get out to the shooter in time. So you have a defensive breakdown. You have, I think, for the most part, it's Byram, it's Oslin, and it's Clifton that make a defensive mistake there. And Benson gets unlucky because he can't get out to the shooter because he bumps into Clifton. So it's a bad defensive zone breakdown, but it was really the only one they had until the end of the game, and they just let off the gas. So that goal ends up being the game winner for the Maple Leafs. Otherwise, Toronto didn't really push all that much. Didn't really create a lot of chances, in my opinion. Grade A chances, again, until the very end where they got a little fat on it. But this is a thought I had about the Leafs because they're heading to the playoffs. They're going to play Ottawa. If you go back, I'll even put it in our text club. I'll link it in the comments of this. Dom Lucian, who covers the NHL for The Athletic, really good stat guy, breaks down the game really well. Last year, after Toronto got eliminated in the playoffs, he had a great, thorough article breaking down what happens to Toronto when they get to the postseason. And in particular, what happens to their stars when they get to the postseason. Yesterday, we talked about Mitch Marner on this show, and I pointed out that his career in points goes down, points per game goes down big time from the regular season to the playoffs. So Dom Lucian, he's breaking down what Toronto does, and it's a very clear thing that they do. The stats show it, and the film shows it. They decide, Toronto, and this is through multiple coaches. This is through Babcock. This is through Sheldon Keefe, and we'll see if Craig Berube is the same thing. This game made me think of it. What Toronto does when they get to the postseason is they say, all that high-flying, scoring, outscoring people that we do in the regular season, that's just not going to work for us to win in the playoffs. We need to become a different type of team. We need to become more physical. We need to slow the game down a little bit. We need to be more defensively responsible. And they start to try to become a team in the playoffs that they're not in the regular season because they've decided what we do in the regular season doesn't work in the playoffs. You look at Austin Matthews' offensive and defensive rating that Lucian has. You look at Marner for this, how they get marginally better defensively in the playoffs. They do get marginally better, but they take such a hit offensively that it's not worth it at all. It's not even close to worth it. You're cutting their offensive efficiency almost in half by that just one offensive rating that he has at The Athletic just to get 20%, 10% better defensive rating wise. So I thought about that yesterday. Have the Leafs decided this is how we got to be in the playoffs? And that's how they get beat, because I think you should just be who you are. Outscore teams. Colorado did it when they won the cup a couple of years ago. People were asking, "Oh, can you actually win the Stanley Cup that way?" Oh, yeah, you can. Because when you have elite talent like that, you should try to run the other team out of your building by scoring as many goals as possible. And when you have Matthews, when you have Marner, when you have Tavares, when you have Nylander, you should try to be that team. And the Leafs don't try to be that team. They try to be something they're not. Now, they play Ottawa. Ottawa's not the strongest of opponent, in my opinion, in the postseason. Allmark could get hot, and I wouldn't be stunned if the Leafs lost at all. It's a dangerous series for them, but I think I'd be picking against them if they had played Florida, and they avoided that. Again, though, that series, we'll talk more about the playoffs in the next couple of weeks. The Senators have a couple of things going for them. Toronto has goaltending that I think is a little tough to trust in the postseason. Stolarz has been great, but I don't know about him going on 4 straight series and having that be capable of winning the cup. And then this point I'm making about them becoming something that they're not in the postseason. That would have me worried if I'm betting on the Leafs. When we come back, one other Sabre thing that I want to get to, Bo Byram, and something that he talked about before the game. Just want to reiterate a thought I'm having about Byram a lot. That when we return here on Locked On Sabres. Today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. Series props are up. You can go look right now. All the series that are in place, we're really just waiting for Columbus and Montreal to see which one of those two will get in. But if you want to bet on Toronto, Ottawa right now, or you want to just even look at what the price is, head over to FanDuel Sportsbook. And it's not just the Stanley Cup playoffs, it is the NBA playoffs as well. The play-in's already begun, and FanDuel's giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Love how FanDuel has everything set up very user-friendly. You can go through and look through, again, all the different types of series props that you want. They kind of break it down by series. You could hit more wagers underneath what that series will be, and they have a bunch of stuff available for you. So, for instance, I'm looking right now at... let's go to Florida and Tampa Bay. Tampa, it's basically a pick 'em, minus 102 on Tampa. But if you wanted to pick, hey, I think the series is going to be a 6-game series. You can go to that. Go under exact games, and they've got 5 options for you. Alternate spreads, correct scores is another one you could go for. The exact series it'll be. If you think the Lightning will win in 7 games, there you go. There it is for you. So check it out, FanDuel Sportsbook. Again, head over to FanDuel.com. Claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Sneaky Joe DiBiase back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. 1 game to go, and then we'll get into full speed off-season mode. Kevin Adams will speak. Lindy Ruff will speak. Players will do locker room clean out. Don't think we'll have any firings. One thing, I buried the lead. Meant to mention this at the very top of the show, but it's not really all that surprising. Kevin Adams confirming to Schopp and the Bulldog yesterday that Lindy Ruff will be back in 2025-26. That sounds to me like Adams thinks he's back too. And he probably is. I would put the odds at like 95-5 that he's back next year. And I don't think he says that if he isn't sure that he's back also. So, I think Adams is back. I think Adams confirmed Lindy being back is definitely proof that Lindy will be. But again, I want to leave a little room for Adams could still be fired because you just never know when a GM's actually going to get canned. So we'll see on that front. The one other news thing to get to, we got a lot of comments today about the arena. We'll have a follow-up about that on tomorrow's show because Pete Gwelly talking about that no one should just the headline for you, and we'll get more into the details tomorrow. The headline was Gwelly today saying, if anybody's uncomfortable about the idea of the Sabres feeling like the Sabres might leave Buffalo, he's like, let me assure you that is not on the table at all. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to be uncomfortable at all. So this lease that's coming up in October, Gwelly's like, just you don't have to be thinking about the idea of them leaving. You still could. I wouldn't. I'm not at this point in time, though, personally. Bo Byram. Paul Hamilton does pregame interviews before every game, and yesterday, one of them was with Bo Byram. And Paul a couple times has asked him about staying in Buffalo long-term this season, and even I think maybe back to last offseason. So that question gets posed to Byram again. And Byram, it's such an easy question to answer if you are intent or have any desire to stick around long term, about wanting to be a part of the solution, feeling like there's something to build on here, liking it here, liking the group. There's just so many ways that a player, even if he isn't sure he's going to stay, there's so many ways a player could talk up the idea of wanting to stay. And Byram just really doesn't do that. Now, maybe that's his personality. I think it's more than that. Bo Byram, to me, every time he speaks about it, yesterday it was like right to, we got to see what happens in the summer. He called it a big summer for him. He's a restricted free agent. And I don't know, that verbiage, it's a big summer for him. That, I don't know, from what my preconceived notions, my preconceived thoughts about Byram and his desire to stay here long-term, every time I hear him talk, I just think more and more that he's going to want a trade. Now, the Sabres might also want a trade. Kevin Adams, when he's spoken about Byram, he doesn't really ever talk about him as being like a core member, being a part of the core. So you've had some good games for Byram this year. You had long stretches of the season where I thought he was awesome. That was almost always when he was playing with Rasmus Dahlin, which is a part of the criticism of Byram, that he only plays great when he is with Dahlin, and he hasn't been with Dahlin for a while now recently. So I think we're headed for a trade this summer. More and more. Every time I hear him talk or Adams talk about him or think about his game for this and the value that he brings and his contract situation and the fact that he's from British Columbia, right? From Western Canada. He's not really close to home at all. Everything kind of leads me to believe that a trade is more likely than a contract extension this summer. But that'll be one of our main topics to track and talk about once the season ends, and that'll be tomorrow. After tomorrow, at least. Sabres and Flyers to wrap things up. So we'll talk more about the matchup, implications in the draft standings tomorrow. There's a little bit of that. And if you're looking for more on the race at the end here, the Blue Jackets have made it interesting. They're giving themselves a shot. If you want more on that, be sure to make your second listen today. Locked on NHL Game Night. Every game, every night until Stanley Cup champions crowned. You get your local analysis on a national stage. So find NHL Game Night on Locked on NHL and YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. That'll do it for us. We will talk to you on the final game day of the Buffalo Sabres season. That will be tomorrow. Talk to you then. And then we'll get into off-season mode. Here in the Locked On Sabres podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.